Oh, this is weird. Um, I have so it says Samsung updated the something in their iOS that makes it so that because the Galaxy S8, its big thing was that it's got an ultra huge screen, so it finally took I don't know, maybe I just never noticed it, but there's like a button now that you press and it'll make sure to use the full screen when you're recording video. It's just a little. I mean, I guess that feature was always there because clearly, like it didn't really need to change the hardware or anything. It just needed the software. It just needed a little button to make it go. So it's just a little weird. The camera just seemed a little bit closer for some reason. Maybe I just hadn't noticed. Maybe I've been recording like that the whole time and just never noticed at all. Anyway, um, I'm at a weird moment where I'm both very late to the party, but also very early to the party. Let's start with the one that I'm late on. Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Finally got around to finishing it. Gotta say, not a lot of story there to spoil. I mean, like, I wasn't really that surprised. Zelda's not really that complicated of a story, and I think that's why that works so well. Is that you can tell the story of um guy rescues princess from evil monster. And, like, that plot is so basic that you can do whatever you want with it, and I feel like Breath of the Wild's very open nature to it. Like someone, I forgot what video it was that I saw, but like a lot of the games coming out like 2016, 2017, were like we're gonna go back to our roots. Or a lot at least a couple of the notable ones at the very least is of course Legend of Zelda, and the other one is Resident Evil. There you go. Where it's not the exact same game. Like when they say go back to their roots, they don't mean make the same game again. They mean reimagine that experience for a fresh new audience, which is something that like what a concept. Maybe go back to the thing that people like, but don't just make the same exact game over again. So for Resident Evil, they went back to the drawing board and they went like, what did people like about Resi One? Like what did people like about the original Resident Evil? And it's the whole spooky nature of it, like its horror aspect. So um I think actually this is from a video by Mark Brown off of Game Maker's Toolkit. So the exact example he uses is of course Resident Evil, which is like it goes from this survival horror game until you go all the way to like Resident Evil 6, and there's like action stunts, and I feel like the movie kind of has some influence to that because the movies are all about that, like these big huge set pieces. Like it kind of moves away from the horror aspect of it, and it became this kind of blockbuster type game or like action game, and it's like that's not at all what Resident Evil is. And of course Resi 4 is very very popular, but that was like I would say like the one time I think that went well. Maybe I heard Resident Evil 5 was also okay except for that whole co-op mechanic, but in terms of like actual gameplay, it's not the fact that it's like just about big action set pieces. It's balancing the set pieces with the actual survival horror aspect of it. So the same thing they did with Zelda, which is they went all the way back to Zelda One, and it's like, um, you start the game and then you go, and that was one of the most like one of the coolest things actually, because it's like very easy to fuck this game up. It was a huge, let's be honest, it was a huge risk to make this game. um it could have easily flopped because making a game that has like no guidance whatsoever, like there's no story. Let's be honest. I mean, like, there's a story in there if you find it, but let's be honest, it's just the same Link saves Zelda from Ganon story. There's not a lot to spoil here. I mean, I'm not gonna get into, like, the plot details and stuff like that, because there is stuff that's specific to Breath of the Wild. But at the end of the day, it's Link saves Zelda from Ganon. Um, that's the very first thing they tell you. It's like one of the very first things they tell you is like, you need to help Princess Zelda defeat Ganon. That like that type of shit. Um, and you get to the very end of the game, and I won't try to talk about it because I think that despite the fact that it's been out for a year now. I think there are still people that haven't experienced it, like me. I just finished it. Um, I would say that a lot of people found the ending of this game a little bit unsatisfying, and I kind of understand that from the perspective of if you went around and collected all the story elements. And let me turn a light on. Actually, this is kind of creepy. Um, I understand that from an aspect of you put so many hours into this game, you kind of want a bigger payoff. But at the same time, I would say that a game like this, which doesn't really have a lot of story in the first place, what kind of ending were you expecting in the first place? You know, like um, it's not a story that is told in such a way that you can like it's hard to explain without actually going into specifics of what the ending actually is. I will say that me as someone coming in from the outside, like I've never owned a Nintendo console. I've only ever heard, the closest thing I've ever gotten to buying my own Nintendo anything is paying for helping my sister pay for a 3DS. That's it. And so a lot of my experiences with Nintendo has been through the 3DS, which isn't, you know, I'm a console gamer, so like I'm not looking at the 3DS aisle, honestly, and I'm not trying to buy like Phantom Hourglass or some shit for the original DS. Like that wasn't me. The closest thing I ever bought to like a Nintendo game would be like Mario or like Donkey Kong. So this was legit the very first Zelda game I've ever played, and I'm really glad because um, this is my Legend of Zelda, and this is the story that I'm gonna run with, and it's just beautiful. And you know they point out how like the title of the game always refers to the most important aspect of the game. You have like the Wind Waker, of course, and in Wind Waker, the Ocarina and Ocarina of Time, the Mask, the Majora's Mask, of course, kind of self-explanatory. And this time they said that the centerpiece of this game is the open world. So um, it's called Breath of the Wild. So um, that's solid. I'll be honest, and I'm not 100% knowing the game either. I downloaded the DLC when I was like around, I would say 93% done with the main story, or sorry, like because when I say the main story, my thing was I want to do all 120 shrines, and I was about 90 or 100. So maybe not 97. Maybe I would say maybe close to like 70-80%. So around I got around like 70-80% of the shrines before I decided to download the DLC, and I did a bit of the Champions Ballad. That was pretty fun. Um, I did that. Um, but yeah, just a solid game in general. Honestly, I quite like it, and immediately am obsessed with Zelda. I will say, like, for the longest time, whenever someone talked Nintendo, the first thing I would go to was, oh, I can't reach. There's too many things in the way right now, but I have a little Donkey Kong action figure. So, like, whenever someone mentions Nintendo and I go, oh, I know Nintendo, I played Donkey Kong. Um, of course, that's not the only Nintendo game I've ever played, but, you know, that was the one game that I can remember that I really loved as a kid was Donkey Kong Country. Um, I've never played any, like, um they what like Super Mario World, I guess, was the very first Mario game I've ever played, and I never played any of the Zelda games, you know, but just playing through Breath of the Wild and just seeing how like beautiful and like how expansive it is, and um it's just fun, it's just great, you know. And um I would say for the first 100 hours it was very fun just stumbling onto something. I did cheat. Uh I looked up how to access all 42 shrine quests. I got around like 30 of them by myself. I think maybe 35 of them by myself, but I was missing like I saw a guide that said there's 42 shrine quests. So I was like, let me just activate all these quests so that I have access to the locations of these shrines. Like I didn't actually look up the shrine locations of all but I think 5 or 6. I think the last 5 or 6 shrines. No, not even, because two of them were from the shrine quest. So in actuality, I I only straight up placed a dot on the map on like 4 shrines, and I'm kind of glad I did because I would never have found them. Um, there's one. I'm like not going into any specifics. There's one that is so far away in the corner of the map, um, in the desert, that I would never have thought to go there. One of them was you had to blow up a wall somewhere, right? But the kicker is the hidden wall is not exactly where you would normally find a hidden wall. Like you have to it's like the hole in the wall is not on the ground floor. It's like right in the middle. And I'm pretty sure that description is just vague enough for some people to go like, "Oh yeah, I remember that," but everyone to just be like, "I don't know what he's talking about." So yeah, like there's like those trends that are like in the middle, just like whatever. They just hid them very well. Um, but for the other ones, I looked at the shrine quests. Some of them I actually found all the way like all already all by myself, and as soon as I talked to the person, it would just auto complete the quest for me. So I guess that's really cool. But some of them, I think I got really lucky with all the shrines because they require like some shrines require special items, and I got really lucky because I just happened to have one on me, and I was like, oh, okay, because otherwise that would have been a pain in the ass trying to look for them. um but luckily somehow I stumbled my way into obtaining these items, and just wasn't gonna use them for anything else, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just use it here. I need it for completion anyway. So I did. So I got all the shrines before I went up and kicked Ganon's face in. Um, pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's one of those boss fights where it's less about. It's more about the collective effort that you went through to finish the game, as opposed to um, how strong you actually are. Which is, I would say that's a little bit disappointing because I felt I was a little too overpowered. Like I was literally like level 99. Like going into like a Kingdom Hearts boss where you're like over leveled for that boss. It's like the set piece is there, but it's just not like the toughness of it just isn't hitting because I'm too prepared for this. I went in with uh hot what, like 80 bomb arrows. I went in with like 80 bomb arrows. I went in with like 100 plus regular arrows, a bunch of other ones. I was like, I don't think I needed all this, but whatever, right? And I had fun with it. It was just that's the point. That's the whole thing is I had fun with it, and I'm actually very very surprised because an open world type game, like any open world type game, I wouldn't really expect myself to be spending more than, I would say, the most would be 40 hours. If I really, really like a game, I would spend around 40 hours. Maybe not even. Because here's the difference between Breath of the Wild and every other open world game out there is there are no markers on the map until you get to it. I mean, there's like there's like a couple like there's a main story quest that tells you exactly the locations of 4 different areas. Tells you where Hyrule Castle is, but those are all like quest related, right? That's the one bit of guidance that the game will give you. Is literally number one with a bullet point is defeat Ganon, which doesn't go away until you defeat Ganon. Uh, but other than that, everything else you literally find for yourself and doesn't show up on your map until you find it. Like there are a number of towers, basically like the fast travel points in the game, and you don't get to place that on the map until you find it. And they have they have a system where you can like turn your binoculars on and use like little pins and put them on the map, But that's the best you can do. Like you look in that direction, you see it, you put a pin on the map, and then you open the map screen and it's like, oh, it's right over there. Walk to it, you know. And I think in the what word am I trying to use here? In the like because of this mechanic of just walk to your destination without any idea of what you're doing, it leads to a bunch of new discoveries. Um, I remember I stood up on a tower and just made a 360-degree turn to see how many towers I can find. And I just went bam, 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 bam. Okay, now they're all marked. Now I know where to go when I want to unlock those. Let me go with this one. This one seems closest. I go over there. I took how many fucking detours? I would find like what, two, three, four shrines on the way there. And sometimes I'll just I'll just walk and then suddenly the little shrine sensor will go off and it's just oh, and then you just follow it. And of course, as time goes on, once you've collected like 80 shrines, that gets a bit harder, and then you start doing some of the weird bullshit to unlock them. All the quests you've avoided to all the quests you avoided in getting these shrines suddenly start becoming more and more important to you. And I think it's just fun. I just had a lot of fun with it. I did not so basically I didn't expect myself to spend 100 plus hours in an open world game. Um, that's just interesting. And you know what? I was kind of when when Legend of Zelda won Game of the Year, part of me was like, I know they deserve it, but you know, I don't think it's all that great. But that's coming from someone that's never played it. Um, I will say that Legend of Zelda very much so deserves it, just because it invokes that idea that Miyamoto originally had with Zelda One, which is it's supposed to be recounting his experience as a child of just like, wandering, that sense of adventure, you know, which a lot of games try to do with such a guided like story. It's a big open world game. You are this character, blah blah blah. Blah. But this time you're just Link, and you're running around this open area, and that's all you get. 10 out of 10. Um, I will say that there's a bunch of games in that game of the year list, which at the end of the day, it's just a little award that I haven't had a chance to play yet. I think Persona 5 is on that list. I beat that, so I was like, I like Persona 5, and it was an RPG, and an RPG I would, that's the other thing. Like Persona 5, heavily guided, heavily railroaded, but I still found myself spending upwards of like hundreds of hours, upwards of like 100 hours um, into that game just because of how much fun it is. Um, what else was on that list? Oh, Mario Odyssey. That's the next game that I'm gonna be playing is Mario Odyssey. But I will say that I've seen it and kind of glad that I'm glad it was on the list, but I'm glad that it went to Zelda if it had to go to a Nintendo franchise. But that's the next game I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna try to do the Zelda DLC whenever I can. I'm not in any rush to finish it right now, but I don't care about spoilers on Zelda anymore. I don't think DLC spoilers are a thing for this game. Just for me specifically, I think that the story is what people really care about, and the DLC is just flavor text at that point. So I don't care much for it. But now I am 100% in Zelda camp. Like I love it. I love that game. I bought this thing. I bought this thing. This thing's awesome. And people don't like Skyward Sword. Apparently, people don't like Skyward Sword, but I think um it's a pretty cool action figure. And a lot of people there's a version of this that's the one from Link to the Past, and that's classic Zelda, which I don't particularly care about. I just don't like the design. And a lot of people also like Twilight Princess, which there's also a figure of that, but I think it's too gritty and dark and doesn't it's not really representative of the art style that I really like. That's just me personally. Like nothing to knock on that game. It's a cool game. I've seen it. But I think just the Skyward Sword um figure is more representative of just a basic like standard. Like if I look at that, that's Link. That's Link from any of the Legend of Zelda games, except for like Toon Link or whatever the fuck. But you see but you see Twilight Princess like, and he's from that GameCube game. Anyway, that's it. That's it. I just really like Breath of the Wild. And I'm glad that I finally got around to it. Um, but that's all. Peace out.